about Israel, but specifically to concentrate in Jerusalem. I'm Efrat Cohen-Bar, my name, Deputy Director of Bimkom, Planners for Planning Rights, sitting in West Jerusalem. Bimkom, Gabriel just talked about what is Bimkom, so I think thank you for this, what you talk about Bimkom. I will skip this, and I want to start immediately. Of course, as you wrote in the papers for this event, the pandemic doesn't affect all the communities and people equally, and this inequality is based on sometimes discrimination that is happened before the pandemic. And I would like to talk about Israel and the area that are governed by Israel in Area C, and a little bit affect, we still affect areas, Gaza Strip, but I'm not going to talk about it. You will see it on the mapping that I'll show you. So we will talk about the most affected communities in Israel. We will map it, and then we'll talk who lives where, and then later, and how they are affected. And later we will talk about Jerusalem, which is my expertise in Bimkom. Let's start with this mapping. I think, okay. You see Israel, and the green area is the West Bank, includes area A, B, and C, and East Jerusalem. And you see the smaller strip down there, which is a Gaza Strip. So the first division of communities in this area is between the people who live inside Israel, all the white areas, and the people that are not citizens of Israel, and they live in those two areas, West Bank and Gaza. Just a minute. Okay. We have, so in general in this area we have Jews, Israeli and Palestine Arabs. As you can see on those two maps, the blue map is showing where are the Jews are living. The dark blue is the area where most of the people live, and the light blue is in the Negev. If you know Israel, the Negev, there are only a few less population and less Jews are living there. In the green, you can see where the most of the Palestinian, Israeli, and Palestine more Arabs where they live in the Negev, in the West Bank, in the north, in the Galil. Where you can see that they don't live in the center along the shore of the Mediterranean Sea in Tel Aviv. Of course, those maps that I will show you here and later are very general. Of course, they are not, I couldn't show all the communities that are here. But for example, in Tel Aviv, there is an Arab community in Jaffa. But in general, there is an area of Jews and area of Arabs. Even when you see in the Negev, for example, that there are Jews and Arabs, in Israel, we don't live in the same communities. It is either divided settlements or separate neighborhood in the same city. Let's continue with this mapping. We can look at this area and see where is the intensive center of everything. We're talking about intensivity. I'm talking about economic, culture, infrastructures. Everything is more intense in those centers and less intense in the periphery. And we can see that the West Bank, the Negev, and the north, the Galil is less intense. We call it, of course, this is the periphery in Israel. We can see that the intensity and density is very concentrated in the same area that where we saw the majority of the Jewish people along the shore of the Mediterranean and going to Jerusalem. We'll see it later in a better way. Looking at the socioeconomic classes, we can see that it same up. It looks. It always looks the same. The high class along the shore, the lower class all over. Actually, the dark color means more intense. The lower class, the darker is in the Negev, where the Bedouin community lives, and the poverty is very spread all over the Negev. Let's continue. Again, looking at the employment, you can see that high tech in the Tel Aviv area, agriculture all over, but not in the center, and lack of employment, of course, in the occupied territories in Area C, in the Negev. Every aspect of life we can see that is separate in the same way, is different, but in the same way. So we can see that in general, all what I show you, we can see that all the goods are concentrated in one small strip, and the rest. And what about all the others? And we, as Bimkom, planners for planning rights, we usually work with others, of course. And let's see who are the others. And we can find some of the others also in the center, but more in the periphery, lower class of Jews of lower class and ultra-Orthodox. The ultra-Orthodox Jews, they are a specific category. I don't know if you are familiar with it, but they are in some ways they are considered to be a lower class, but on the other hand, they are very connected to the government. So they have a specific stage in between. We will not talk, it is very, very interesting to talk about them, but we will not be able to talk more about that. So let's continue with the others. Arab settlements within Israel. Bedouin Arabs, mostly in the Negev, but not only. Palestinian residents in East Jerusalem. And Palestinian in Area C, all over the West Bank. So these are the big groups of people that are considered to be the periphery of all the aspects that I mentioned before: employment, culture, education, infrastructure, planning, and all. And when we look at this map that I just put in front of you now, we can say, I guess we can see it everywhere, not only here. The further away from the center, the more basic elements for a reasonable life are missing. And talking about planning and development, we can talk about employment and culture, but what is more crucial for the communities that we talk about is the planning, the the possibility to build a house, to have a water, sewage, electricity, and education and health clinic. And each group of people that I mentioned has their own difficulties. Some of them have all the difficulties that they are missing: education, culture, infrastructures, plants, and everything. And some of them are in between. So what they are actually missing, it is not only missing, but we can see that the communities that I just mentioned, they suffer. Many of them suffer from residential density in time of lockdowns and pandemic. No room for isolation, lack of infrastructures, water, electricity, internet, roads, which brings them to lack of computers, difficulty studying from home, the low-tech employment. We are talking about this opportunity to meet all together now here from all over the world in low-tech employment or low-tech communities. No possibility for such an event. And we in Bimkom, we work with this kind of communities, and they cannot work from home. So they can make maybe in agriculture, but if they are working in tourism, in hotels, in restaurant, so there are the more people that are affected by a pandemic. We can see that in our communities, there is a lack of quality open spaces, which is especially problematic during lockdowns. We see dependency on public transportation. In Israel, the public transportation is not good anyway. But in time of the pandemic, it is much worse. There are times that it doesn't work at all. And we can see that people, they do have car and other opportunity, and they have money to take a cab, they can manage. But people that are depend on this public transportation, they are suffer more from this lockdown. And I mentioned also the threat of home demolition, which is, in the case of Israel, is affected almost all the communities that I just mentioned, all the Palestinians and Arab communities that I mentioned, they are suffer from threat of home demolition. It is connected to the problem of the political agenda of the Israel, which specifically in Area C and East Jerusalem. Actually, we want the land without the people, and planning is a very strong tool dealing with this. If we don't want the people in East Jerusalem, the Palestinians, so maybe if we will not allow them to build houses, maybe they will leave, and we won't have to deal with this problem. I will talk about it later on. Just a minute. Okay, so now I want to start talking about specifically about the Palestinian community in East Jerusalem. You can see the location where you, and then you can see East Jerusalem. This is the green line, if you can see what I'm pointing on. So this is West Jerusalem, and all the rest and colorful is the East Jerusalem. Of course, in this map, all the colored are Palestinian neighborhoods, And what you see in gray is the Israeli settlement within East Jerusalem. I'm not sure what you know about the conflict in Jerusalem, but in Israel. But let's say it like this: we have, as I mentioned, in Israel, Arab communities, and we call them the Arabs of 48, because in the establishment of the state, there are Arab communities that stayed in Israel, and they became citizens of Israel, but Arabs. And then in 67, we add these Arabs of 67 here in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem. The Arabs of 67 are the Arabs that were occupied in the war in 67. And they are divided to two groups. One is the people in the West Bank that they have they don't hold the Israeli ID card, but they don't have other government, or they have the Palestinian Authority, which is not a full state. It doesn't have all the services or all the bodies of a real state. And the group of Palestinians that are resident of East Jerusalem, they are holding an Israeli ID card, but they are not citizens, they are residents. So they can work all over Israel, and they can cross borders, but they cannot participate at the election in Israel. They can participate in the election of the municipality, but most of them choose not to do that. They don't recognize the Israeli occupied Jerusalem, the unification of Jerusalem. They don't recognize it, although they can enjoy many things that when you have a residency in Jerusalem, you have many privilege comparing to the people in the West Bank. So I will. Okay. Now I'll speak while you will see some images from East Jerusalem. I will talk about the political situation, and if you ever saw any images from Jerusalem, maybe you didn't see those kind of images. Since the beginning, after the War of 67 and the annexation of East Jerusalem, Israel treat the Palestinians in East Jerusalem as a problem, as a demographic problem, because the idea was that strong Israel and strong Jerusalem has to hold a majority of Jews in Jerusalem. And planning was one of the tools to keep this what we call the demographic balance. Of course, it is not a balance, but the will to have the Jewish majority all over Jerusalem. The idea was that if people will not be able to build and live in Jerusalem, they will choose to leave Jerusalem, the borders of the United Jerusalem, and move to the West Bank, and then they will lose their residency in Jerusalem, and we will get the majority of the Jews. So some of this happened. Many people lived. They left Jerusalem to the West Bank or all over the world. The people who left are the stronger people in Jerusalem. Of course, the poor people couldn't couldn't live, and they had to stay, and they had to build, and they need plans that allow them to build. But Israel hesitate preparing this kind of plans. And if one choose to build his house without permit, so as you see here, the authority came and demolished the house. In East Jerusalem, there are some, nobody knows how many, some 30 or 40,000 housing units were built without permits, considered to be illegal. According to the law, the Israeli law, if you build illegal houses, the authority can come and demolish this house. But people did it, and they risked all their money trying to build a home. For many years, the municipality prepared only kind of plans that allowed only a little bit of possibility for build. You can see in those images that the problem is not only permits for building houses. It is always also the infrastructure, the cleaning in the street. When you build without permit, you cannot connect your house to electricity, to sewage, to water. So in many of those houses that you see, sometimes they don't have electricity. They have to connect themselves to a generator, or to connect themselves to the neighbor to get. Now you see a playground, which is one of the first playground in East Jerusalem that we in Bimkom developed with the people of one of the neighborhoods. 7 years ago, for a population of 3,000 to, how do you say it? 300,000 people in East Jerusalem, about almost 40% of the population of Jerusalem. There were only 5 playgrounds all over the neighborhoods of East Jerusalem. And at the day of the lockdown, people in East Jerusalem suffered much more than others when the government limit the distance to go away, to go, just a minute, I will put again I will put again those photographs that you just saw. So here, let's start it again. The lack of playgrounds, people actually really felt it in their home with the kids. Look at the containers on the top of those buildings. These are water containers because the system for infrastructure for water in East Jerusalem is problematic, and each one has to put his own containers on the top of the building, which sometimes is very, very problematic. I was talking about the playgrounds. People felt the lockdown much stronger in those neighborhoods because the lack of open, you can see that many open spaces, but not quality open spaces, because of there are only few playgrounds. After we started in Bimkom to build with the community some gardens that I showed you in the end of this list of a series of photographs. Now, 7 years ago, there were 7 playgrounds all over East Jerusalem, and now there are 16 because we started and built 3, but the municipality, after we went to court, and court told the municipality, you must develop some playgrounds in East Jerusalem. They started doing it, and sometimes we try to help. So now there are 16. If we want to compare it, in each single neighborhood in West Jerusalem, there are some dozen of playgrounds. 16 is something that can be, maybe could be enough for one neighborhood. Also in schools, at the time of, in places where there are no electricity, or the electricity is not all day long, and they don't have computers at home, people cannot study from distance. And I have kids at home. We sit each one sit in a different room. I can lecture here. They can play there or study there in the other room. In many houses in East Jerusalem, but also in the other communities I mentioned, this is not possible. If schools are closed, so no education, no official education. Actually, I think I can open now for questions. We can leave this photographs or.
So, Efrat, thank you so much for your account of one of the, I would call this one of the defining conflicts of our time, right? Mm-hmm. I think we all look at Israel and what's going there because of the conflict, we are all involved in some way. And but there are questions, but I would like to ask you to tell us a little bit more about what Bimkom does involving citizens. How do you work with the citizens?
Okay.
I mean, they are not even citizens because they don't have Israeli citizenship,
yeah,
right?
They are resident, but actually we work with them like we work with other communities, even citizens, like the Bedouins in the Negev. They are citizens. The lower class in the neighborhood, Jews in the neighborhoods in the center also, or in the south, they are citizens, and we work with all of them. We work with the planning authorities, and not only planning authorities, other authorities. We work with communities. We never go alone to talk about this community or another. We go meet the community, for example, a small village, unrecognized village in the Negev, or a sub-neighborhood in East Jerusalem, or a small community in Area C. And I will stop it and we can, okay. So we start with them. We check with these communities the problems they have. For example, they don't have a road leading to their place in a small village in Area C, and they need a road, or they are living in an unrecognized village in the Negev, and they don't have a school or water. So we work with them sometimes to get this recognition, to make the Israeli authority to recognize this small village. And then, so we write together documents. We work vis-a-vis the authorities, and sometimes in the Negev, for example, we have some success, and some villages were recognized as a location that they can stay there. So then we start the struggle for adequate planning because when Israel, the Jews are planning for the Bedouin community, they think about how we live, not what the needs, the specific needs of this community and how they want to be. And so we write together a document. We called it, how can I translate it to English? Planning principle. And then with this, we go to authority and we said, we need to plan this area in this way. In other places, we for example, in Jerusalem, the municipality, usually they prepare plans, but they prepare plans that are not allowing a lot of development, specifically development for housing, because as I mentioned, they don't want this population to grow in Jerusalem. So now in Jerusalem, we face this phenomena of planning a lot for the Palestinian community, but not for housing. So the phenomena of building illegally is going to continue because they must build, they must live somewhere. So we can go to court, we submit objections to plans that are for settlement, for Jews, Israeli settlement or on land of Palestinians. We in the urban renewal in the Jews communities in the cities of Israel, we work vis-a-vis authority to strengthen participation in planning and things like that.
I will cut you a little bit short because we are running a little bit out of time, and there are lots of questions in the chat. I just want to reinforce something that you explained, is that the planning is used to oppress a part of the population, right? But I just want to highlight that this is not something that happens only in Israel. It happens almost everywhere. Yeah. In South Africa, in Brazil, in Colombia, in the United States, planning has been used to separate, to oppress, to discourage even people from progressing. But I'd like to go to the chat and read a few of the questions. So maybe it's a good idea if you answer briefly, because there are quite a few questions. There are quite a few questions about who pays for the infrastructure for the Palestinian settlements. Okay. If there is no state, how does it?
Okay, so in East Jerusalem, first, if there is, the location, the settlement is recognized, for example, in the Negev, so it is paid by the municipality of this place. If it is unrecognized, so there are no infrastructures. So, and if one wants to bring water to their home, they have to pay and put these pipes to bring the water by themselves, and that's what happens in the Negev. In the West Bank, the West Bank divided into three categories: area C, A, B, and C. So in area A and B, the Palestinian Authority is responsible for the infrastructures and services. In area C, the Israeli authorities, they play like there are no Palestinians. Area C is the place where the Israeli settlements are located. And they ignore that there are many, many small settlements of Palestinians, so they don't get any service at all. We had to go to court to bring electricity Otherwise, they use electricity, solar panels, and then dig holes in the ground to bring water, or they bring water in tanks. They just it is very, very expensive to get those services.
Yeah, go on.
In East Jerusalem, it is the municipality, the Israeli, the United Jerusalem. So the Israeli municipality is responsible for those infrastructures. But when you, as I talked about these playgrounds, when you look at the Israeli neighborhood comparing to Palestinian, you can see the difference. No paved roads, no not enough schools, not enough classrooms, not enough playgrounds. So yes, but the people.
If we could move on a little bit, because there are quite a few questions about how the Israeli government uses building permits to control population. So they deny building permits in some areas.
Yeah, it is first before you can ask for a permit, you have to have a land that is designated for development, for housing. So the first stage to limit this possibility of development is to prepare to make plans for this area, or first not to make any plan, or to make plans that the development in it is very limited, using less building rights, allowed only 2 floors compared to 20 floors in West Jerusalem, allowing a percentage. We count, we call it a percentage of building rights. It is when you have more percentage of building rights, you can build more. So in the plans that they prepare to, so then one have a plan, a piece of land, and one wants to build a house there. And you can see that this land is designated as a green area. A green area is not any development is not allowed. So we cannot. So then he has to start to ask to change the land designation.
So they use the designation of green area to actually forbid people from building, right?
Yes. Yes. And not only and then the area that is designated for housing, they give only a small amount of building rights. So you can build only two apartments. You can
so the density is not. There is a very interesting question from my friend Ayn. She is asking, this is clearly a spatial injustice, right? Does this contribute a lot to radicalization of youth, for example? Do you think?
Yes. It depends. Even to be very, okay, you know, there are times that it is, in some areas here, it is a bit dangerous to go out in the street. It depends if we are in time of intifada, the first intifada, second intifada, the third, and who knows. So sometimes people are actually can bomb other people. But let's talk about just regular days. Yes, in East Jerusalem, for example, the poverty of the community there, and sometimes the lack of possibility to do anything they don't have clubs or playgrounds, as I said. So they start throwing stones on the military forces, and the police and military enter the house. It is a whole story. I cannot, you know, just open newspaper and you can see that it happens all the time. And it is not only about planning, it is about this conflict. We have the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is here all the time. So sometimes it is more hidden and sometimes is out in the street and you can see it. But we all the time live in this conflict.
Yes, there is a very interesting question from Stephen. He's asking if a Jewish citizen gets a building permit and builds a house, are they allowed to rent it to Palestinians? And do they do that?
That's a very tricky question. First, you should understand that most of the land in Israel is not owned by private people, but by the state. So most of the construction in the Israeli areas are happening by the state or many bodies of the states. The people who owned private land in Israel are Palestinians, mostly. There are also Jews that own land. So usually private, no, there are private, of course, developers that they do ask for permit. And there are, if they will build illegally, they are the same in this, they are, maybe the authority will come and to demolish this house. But when we compare, and that's Roberto, this chapter 14 of the book that you published, I read it, and he compared the difference between the difference of illegal building in West Jerusalem and East Jerusalem. In East Jerusalem, you find a whole building that is illegal. In West Jerusalem, you can see a pergola, a shade, a small shade, or maybe a half floor that is, or the building was a bit larger than was built larger than in the permit. So it is a different kind of illegality. And usually they pay tax and then they go through process of make this illegal building legal. And sometimes there is a demolition in West Jerusalem of a balcony or a half floor.
So the law is applied very differently to different groups, isn't it?
Yeah, but also the illegality is different. When you prepare plans that allowed development, so people can build according to this plan. They can build, they are allowed to build 18 floors, huge amount of square meters of commercial and employment and housing. And so they can, they must be a bit, they are not forced to be, the Jews are not forced to build illegally. Mm-hmm. The Palestinians, they are forced to build illegally because the plans are not, they are not allowed them to build enough for what they need.
They are forced into illegality, aren't they? I have a question from our YouTube channel, and we promised people watching on YouTube that we would answer their questions. So I'll just there's a question from Sally. How do you deal with the Israeli law that prevents many plans to happen? It's mainly, do you go to the courts, as you mentioned? Is it the main instrument?
I don't understand what it forced plans not to happen. I didn't understand the question.
So how do you deal with the when if I may interpret the question, I think he wants to know what's your main tool to fight the Israeli resistance to give permits?
Okay, yes. So we in Bimkom usually we don't deal directly with the illegality of the construction of a house, because for this you need lawyers. And the Palestinian community, they use a lot of lawyers, many lawyers, and they go to court every single person must go to court, almost. But we try to deal with it before that, before the construction. We try to, or after the construction, to make illegal building legal by preparing plans. So we don't prepare plans by ourselves, but we encourage authority to prepare plans. We work vis-a-vis in lobby vis-a-vis authorities, planning authorities, but also we go to court, specifically when the authority, they prepare, for example, a plan for a national park, which takes all the land of 2 Palestinian communities in East Jerusalem, and it limits the possibility of development in those 2 neighborhoods. So we go to, first we object, we have this process in the planning, according to the planning law. When the authorities submit a plan, we go with the communities and object this plan. Usually our objection is rejected. It is almost all the objections, according to the law, are rejected. And then we appeal to higher level of the planning system, to the national committee, and we try to re-object the plan there. And then if we decided on this plan, and this is a fact and part of the law, the plan became part of the law after they approved it, we can go to court, and we do it. When we start working with the community, we will go with this community all the way long, from the objection to the appeal to court, and sometimes we just hold we get time, like these processes are so long. We started some of them 20 years ago when the Bimkom was established, and we are still involved in some of this holding and stop those unfair plans that the authority is doing.
Look, we are almost done with our time, unfortunately. So I will pose one last question, and I'm super sorry, guys. We can't go on, but I will put one last question. I think it's a very interesting question. The person is asking, well, we know that Netanyahu is never going to accept a Palestinian state. That's the government that is there now. What are the chances that this is going to change, you think, Efrat, in the near future?
In the near future, that's easy. Nothing is going to be changed in the near future. Mm-hmm. The question is if there is some hope for change in the very I don't know what to say. No, it is. I think that because in the national sphere, those weak communities, they don't have any hope. Not only the Palestinians, but also the poor, the lower class, the poor people within Israel. They don't have because we have a problem not only because of the conflict, but also the economic stage and the ideas agenda of the economic agenda in Israel is it doesn't count the poor.
Sounds very familiar.
Yeah. So I don't know. We are waiting for the revolution. But, till the revolution will come, I think maybe the question is within the municipalities. It is about the cities that can make a change. But I will say that it can happen in Israel, if we're talking about those communities. The municipalities that can make a change are the Jewish municipalities.
Mm-hmm.
Not the Arabs in Israel, not the East Jerusalem. They have to stay for this revolution to come.
And the revolution will be made by the young people who are here today. So guys, it's so strange when we are on Zoom, but let's give Efrat a virtual clapping.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. And the objective today was to discuss a very known and extreme case of use of spatial planning as an instrument of spatial injustice to oppress. As I said, that's not only in Israel, but it happens all over the world. I think we see lots of examples in the United States. Maybe we will have time to discuss that. For now, Efrat, thank you so much. Thank you. There are lots of people in this room and from so many universities. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Guys, we come to the end of the first part of our event. For those who are working with the manifesto, we are going to have a 10-minute break and then we will come to the same room, right? I will leave the room open and we come back. I'm happy to say that we were invited by a very prestigious magazine called Spatial Justice. We put the link in the chat. It's up there somewhere, to publish the best manifesto. We are not thinking in terms of best manifestos. This is not a competition, but we will try to publish at least a few that are outstanding, right? So I think that's a good incentive for you guys to think, okay, well, let's try to get this published. But oh, thanks, Anya. Anya put the link to the. But now, I know that there are lots of questions, and I hope we can discuss more freely later on. But for now, we are having a 10-minute break. I put, if you look, I will put it again, a link to a Google Doc. For those working with us in the second part, you can use that link to put your statement, right? But for now, thank you so much for all those who are here on behalf of TU Delft and all the team that helped organize this part. I know that many of you are not coming back, but many of you are coming back. So I will see you in 10 minutes. See you. Bye-bye.